Welcome to Creepytalks, where hidden fears come alive through chilling horror tales. Dare to listen as every story pulls you deeper into the darkness. Story 1. The Hollow Field. Ethan never believed in silence being dangerous until he moved to Black Hollow. The countryside there didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty. Not the kind of empty where birds chirp and wind whispers through trees. This was different. The air itself felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. The locals barely spoke. When Ethan introduced himself, they nodded politely but avoided eye contact, as if looking too long might invite something unwanted. He thought it was just small-town behavior, until the warnings began. Don't go near the field behind your house after sunset. That's what the old woman at the grocery store told him. No explanation, just that. Ethan laughed it off. He had moved there to escape city noise, not to entertain ghost stories. But the field, it was strange. During the day, it looked ordinary. Tall, dry grass stretched endlessly, with a single crooked scarecrow standing near the center. No farms, no crops. Just that one figure, stitched together from torn fabric and old wood. But at night, that's when the uneasiness started. The first night, Ethan woke up around 2:13 a.m. He didn't know why. His room was cold, unnaturally cold. His breath came out in faint white clouds. The window facing the field was slightly open, even though he remembered shutting it. And then he heard it. A faint sound, like something dragging across dry grass. Shh, drag, shh, drag. Ethan sat up slowly, his heart beginning to race. He told himself it was just the wind, but the wind didn't stop and start like that. It sounded deliberate, rhythmic, closer. He got out of bed and walked toward the window. Every instinct told him to stay away, but curiosity pulled harder. The field was barely visible in the moonlight, pale, lifeless, and the scarecrow, it wasn't where it was before. Ethan froze. He was sure of it. During the day, it stood far out in the center. Now it was closer, much closer. He stared, trying to convince himself it was just perspective, shadows playing tricks. Then the sound came again. Shh. Drag. This time he saw it. The scarecrow's arm twitched, just a little, but enough. Ethan slammed the window shut and stumbled back. His chest tightened, breath quick and shallow. He laughed nervously, trying to ground himself. Not real, not real. You're just tired. He didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, everything looked normal. The scarecrow was back in the center of the field, exactly where it had always been. Ethan almost convinced himself it had been a nightmare, until he noticed the footprints. Leading from the field to his house, they were long drag marks, like something heavy had been pulled across the ground. The grass near his backyard fence was flattened, bent unnaturally inward, and right below his window, the dirt was disturbed. Something had been standing there, watching. Ethan went back to the town that day, trying to shake the unease. He found the old woman again. I think someone was in my yard last night, he said. She didn't look surprised. She looked tired. Did you look at it? She asked quietly. Ethan hesitated. The scarecrow? Her expression tightened. You should not look at it when it moves. A chill ran down his spine. What does that even mean? She leaned closer, lowering her voice. It doesn't like being seen. Ethan felt a knot form in his stomach. You're saying it moves? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said something worse. It used to be a man. Ethan laughed again, but it sounded hollow. Okay, that's not funny. He was buried in that field, she continued, ignoring him. Long ago. But something went wrong. The ground there, it doesn't keep things buried. Ethan's smile faded. The scarecrow, she whispered, is just what it wears now. That night, Ethan locked every door and window. He kept all the lights on, and he told himself he wouldn't look outside, no matter what. At 2:13 a.m., it started again. Shh, drag, shh, drag. Closer than before, much closer. Ethan lay in bed, eyes squeezed shut, hands gripping the blanket. His entire body trembled as the sound approached his house. Then, silence. Complete suffocating silence. For a moment, he thought it was over, until he heard something inside his room. A soft, wet creaking sound, like wood bending under weight. Very slowly, Ethan opened his eyes. The window was open again. Cold air poured in, and standing inside his room was the scarecrow. Up close, it wasn't made of cloth. It was stitched skin, rotting. Its face was twisted, stretched over a skull that moved unnaturally beneath it. Hollow eye sockets stared directly at him, but they weren't empty. Something inside them was watching, aware. Its head tilted, and then it spoke, in a dry, cracking voice that sounded like soil being torn apart. "You looked at me." Ethan tried to scream, but no sound came out. The scarecrow took a step closer. Its limbs dragged like they didn't belong to it. "You weren't supposed to see." Its arms stretched toward him, too long, bending in ways no human arm could. "You saw where I stand." Its voice dropped to a whisper. "So now, you take my place." The next morning, the field looked the same as always. Tall grass, empty sky, and one scarecrow standing silently in the center. But if you looked closely, you'd notice something new. Its clothes were different, and its face looked a lot more human. Story 2. The Well That Breathes. Lena Carter had always hated the countryside, not because it was quiet, but because it was too quiet. The kind of silence that presses against your ears until you start hearing things that shouldn't exist. But after her sister's sudden disappearance, she had no choice. Black Hollow was the last place Mara Carter had been seen, and Lena wasn't leaving until she found out what happened. The locals didn't want to talk. Every question Lena asked was met with the same uneasy glance, and then silence, until one man finally spoke. Old, thin, with eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in years. "You're too late," he said. Lena clenched her jaw. "Too late for what?" He hesitated, then whispered, "The well already took her." The well. That's what everyone avoided. It sat deep in the woods, far beyond the fields, hidden behind twisted trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. There was no path leading to it, but somehow people always found it when they weren't supposed to. Lena didn't believe in curses or haunted wells, but she believed in finding her sister. So that night, she went looking. The forest felt wrong, not dark, just muted. Like the world had been wrapped in something thick and suffocating. Even her footsteps sounded distant, as if she wasn't fully there. Then she heard it, a faint sound, breathing, slow, heavy, coming from somewhere ahead. Lena stopped, listened. It wasn't hers. It was deeper, wetter, like air being pulled through something hollow and ancient. She followed it, step by step, until she saw it. The well stood in a small clearing, old stones stacked unevenly, covered in moss and black stains that looked too dark to be water. The wooden cover hung broken to one side, as if something had forced its way out. And the breathing, it was coming from inside. Inhale. The air around her seemed to pull inward slightly. Exhale. A faint, warm gust brushed against her face. Lena's stomach twisted. Wells weren't supposed to breathe. She stepped closer. "Hello?" she called softly. No response, just that steady, unnatural breathing. Her hands trembled as she reached the edge and looked down. At first she saw nothing, just darkness, thick, endless. Then something moved. Far below, a pale shape, shifting slowly like it was floating in thick liquid. Lena leaned in further, squinting. "Mara?" she whispered. The shape stopped, completely, as if it had heard her. Then it moved upward, fast, too fast. Lena stumbled back, heart slamming against her ribs. The breathing grew louder, harsher, like whatever was inside had suddenly become aware. And then she heard it, a voice, faint, broken. Lena." Her blood ran cold. "Mara," she choked. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Help! Me?" Tears filled Lena's eyes. I'm here. I'll get you out." She leaned over the edge again, desperately scanning the darkness. "I can't see you. Where are you?" A pause, then the voice whispered, "Closer." Every instinct screamed at her to stop, but it was her sister. She couldn't leave her there. Lena climbed onto the edge of the well, gripping the cold stone as she leaned further inside. "I'm right here," she said shakily. "Reach up. I'll pull you out." The breathing stopped, completely. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, something grabbed her wrist. Lena screamed. The grip was tight, freezing cold, fingers digging into her skin with unnatural strength. She tried to pull away, but it yanked her downward, hard. Her chest slammed against the stone edge as she fought to stay up. "Let go!" she screamed, clawing at the ground. The thing inside the well began to pull harder, and then she saw it. It wasn't Mara, not anymore. Its face was stretched, distorted, like it had been underwater for too long. Skin pale and swollen, eyes sunken deep into black sockets. But worst of all, it was smiling, too wide, too wrong. Its mouth opened slowly, and when it spoke, it wasn't just one voice. It was many, layered, overlapping. "Mara is here. Mara is safe. Mara is part of us." Lena's body went numb with terror. "What are you?" she whispered. The thing tilted its head unnaturally, and then more hands appeared from the darkness. Dozens of them, grabbing, reaching, clawing their way up the stone walls. "You came to find her," the voices whispered together. "So now, you stay with her." Lena screamed as the hands tightened around her arms, her legs, her waist, pulling her down, dragging her into the suffocating darkness. The last thing she saw before she disappeared was her sister's face, right beside the others, smiling the same impossible smile. The next morning the forest was quiet again. The well stood still, silent, harmless, as if nothing had ever happened. But if you listened carefully, you could still hear it. Inhale, exhale, and sometimes, if you got too close, you might hear a familiar voice calling your name, begging you to come closer. Story 3, The House That Waits. No one in Black Hollow talked about the house on Briar Lane, not because they didn't know about it, but because they remembered too much. Daniel Reeves arrived just before winter, a writer, desperate and burnt out, chasing isolation to finish his next novel. Black Hollow seemed perfect, quiet, remote, forgotten, exactly what he needed. And the house? It was cheap, too cheap. The real estate agent refused to step inside. "I'll wait here," she said quickly, forcing a smile. Daniel frowned. "You're not even going to show me around?" "I've already seen it," she replied. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was holding something back. The house looked normal. Old, sure. Wooden floors, faded wallpaper, a faint smell of dampness, but nothing unusual, except for one thing. There were no mirrors, not in the bathroom, not in the bedroom, not anywhere. Previous owner removed them, the agent said when Daniel asked. Why? She hesitated, then gave the kind of answer people give when they don't want to tell the truth. Personal preference. Daniel bought the house anyway. The first few nights were uneventful, peaceful even. He wrote for hours, the silence helping his thoughts flow again. For the first time in months, he felt productive, until the dream started. At exactly 3:07 a.m. every night, Daniel woke up, not suddenly, slowly, like something was pulling him out of sleep. And every time, he felt watched. The first time he ignored it. The second time, he checked the house. By the third night, he couldn't ignore it anymore. Because that's when he heard it. A faint sound from the hallway. Tap. A pause. Tap. Like someone lightly knocking on wood. Daniel sat up, his throat dry. Hello? He called out. No response, just that slow, deliberate tapping. Tap. Tap. It was coming from the end of the hallway, from a door he didn't remember opening before. The door was slightly ajar. Darkness spilled out from the crack. The tapping stopped the moment he stepped closer. Silence. Thick. Unnatural. Daniel reached out and pushed the door open. Inside was a small room. Empty. Completely empty. No furniture. No windows. Just bare walls. And something strange. On the far wall, there was a faint outline, rectangular, like something had been hanging there. A mirror. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. He stepped closer, squinting at the wall. And then he saw it. A reflection. For a split second, he saw himself, standing there, staring at the wall. But there was no mirror, nothing to reflect him. Daniel stumbled back, heart pounding. No, that's not possible. He laughed nervously, running a hand through his hair. I'm just tired. But deep down, he knew what he saw. That night, he didn't sleep. The next day, he searched the house, and in the attic, he found them. Dozens of mirrors, stacked against the walls, covered in old sheets, hidden. Daniel pulled one of the sheets away. Dust filled the air as the glass beneath was revealed. His reflection stared back at him. Normal. Relieved, he exhaled. See? Nothing's wrong. But then, his reflection didn't move. Daniel froze. Slowly, he raised his hand. The reflection stayed still smiling, even though he wasn't. His blood turned to ice. What? The reflection tilted its head, not copying him, moving on its own, and then it spoke, without sound, just lips moving silently. But Daniel understood. You finally looked. Daniel stumbled back, knocking into another mirror. More reflections, more versions of himself, all watching, all smiling. You're not real, he whispered. The reflections began to move, one by one, turning their heads, stepping closer to the glass, pressing their hands against it from the inside. You kept us in the dark. The voice wasn't in the room. It was in his head, echoing, layered, wrong. Daniel ran, down the stairs, out of the attic, slamming the door behind him. His breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. This isn't real. This isn't real. But when he looked up, he froze. There was a mirror in the hallway. There hadn't been one before. His reflection stood inside it, not copying him, just standing there, watching. Then it stepped forward, and the glass rippled. Daniel screamed as his reflection reached out and grabbed him. The world twisted, cold, silent, dark. When Daniel opened his eyes, he was inside, trapped behind glass, unable to move, unable to scream. And outside, something else wore his face. It smiled, turned, and walked away. The house on Briar Lane still stands, empty, waiting. Sometimes new people move in, Writers, travelers, lost souls looking for silence. And every time, the mirrors stay hidden until the house decides it's time to be seen again. If you ever find yourself there and you notice something strange, no reflections, no mirrors, leave immediately. Because if you ever see yourself before the house lets you, it means you're already inside.